I almost didn't recognize him at first. The parking lot was half empty, the kind you only see behind closed grocery stores late at night or abandoned strip malls that never quite recovered. My headlights swept across cracked asphalt, faded white lines, and then movement. A man stepped out from between two cars. He looked thinner, older, tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. It took my brain a few seconds to catch up to my heart. "Daniel?" I whispered, my hands tightening on the steering wheel. He froze. The light caught his face then, and there was no mistaking it. My son, my only child, standing in a dark parking lot at nearly midnight, wearing the same jacket he'd owned for years, his shoulders hunched like he was bracing for impact. "Mom?" he said softly. That single word cracked something open inside me. I pulled over without thinking, parked crookedly, and got out of the car. The night air was sharp, cold enough to sting my lungs, but I barely felt it. All I could see was him, my boy, looking at me like he'd been caught doing something shameful. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced behind him, and that's when I saw the car. An old sedan, windows fogged from the inside, the back seat piled with blankets and bags. A child's sneaker sat on the dashboard like it had been left there without thought. My heart started pounding. "Daniel," I said again, slower this time, "why are you here?" He swallowed hard. "We're just resting," he said. "We." The word echoed. I walked past him before he could stop me. "Mom, wait!" I reached the car and tapped lightly on the window. The fog cleared just enough for me to see two small faces staring back at me. Wide eyes. Familiar eyes. "Grandma?" the older one whispered. My knees nearly gave out. They were curled together under mismatched blankets, cheeks flushed from the stale heat of the car. My youngest grandson clutched a stuffed dinosaur with one arm, the other wrapped tightly around his brother like he was afraid he might disappear. "How long have you been here?" I asked, my voice shaking. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. "Not long," he said. It was the same lie he used when he was 10 and broke something he wasn't supposed to touch. "Try again," I said. He sighed, shoulders sagging. "A few weeks." The word hit me like a punch. "A few weeks?" I repeated. "Daniel, it's winter." I know. We've been moving around. It's not always like this." I turned back to the boys. "Why aren't you in school?" I asked gently. The older one shrugged. "Dad says we're on a break." My chest tightened. "Where's your mother?" I asked. Daniel stiffened. "At work," he said too fast. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. I didn't ask any more questions in the parking lot. I opened my car doors and told the boys to get in. "Mom, you don't have to," Daniel started. "Get in the car," I said, my voice firm in a way I hadn't used in years. The boys scrambled out, dragging blankets and bags with them. When I saw the bags up close, plastic grocery sacks filled with clothes, notebooks, loose toys, I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. They climbed into the back seat of my car, quiet, obedient, like kids who had learned not to draw attention to themselves. Daniel stood there, frozen. "You're coming too," I said. He nodded and got in. The drive to my house was silent. The boys fell asleep almost immediately, exhaustion overtaking them the moment they were warm. Daniel stared out the window, jaw clenched, like he was bracing himself for a storm. When we pulled into my driveway, he finally spoke. "I didn't want you to see this," he said. I turned off the engine and faced him. "No parent ever wants to see their child suffering," I replied. "But this?" I gestured toward the sleeping boys. "This should never have happened." He swallowed. "I tried," he said. "I really did." "Then tell me," I said quietly. "Tell me how my son ended up living in his car with his children." He closed his eyes. And then, slowly, the truth began to spill out. It started, he said, with his wife losing her job. Just temporary, she'd told him. I'll find something better. Daniel picked up extra shifts, took on freelance work at night after the boys were asleep. He handled the bills, the groceries, the school lunches. She said she'd take care of the house, he said, that she'd focus on the kids. But the house grew messier, the fridge emptier. She was always on her phone, he said, always texting, smiling at the screen. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Then came the missed rent payment. She said she thought I'd covered it. I thought she had. They argued, apologized, promised to communicate better. Then another payment was missed. And then, one day, he said, voice cracking, I came home and the locks were changed. I stared at him. What? She'd moved out, he said, took what she wanted, left the rest. And the boys? I asked. He laughed bitterly. She said they'd be better off with me, that she needed space. Space. The word felt obscene. She didn't even tell you where she was going? I asked. No, he replied, just left a note and a number for a lawyer. My hands trembled. And the car? I asked. Our lease was in her name, he said. She'd stopped paying months before. I didn't know. I leaned back in my seat, stunned. They evicted us, he continued. I tried to get a place, but with no savings and no address. His voice trailed off. So you lived in the car, I said. He nodded. I thought it would be temporary, he said, just until I got back on my feet. And you didn't call me? I said. He looked ashamed. I didn't want to be a burden, he whispered. I reached out and grabbed his hand. You are my son, I said. You are never a burden. That night, after I tucked my grandsons into warm beds with clean sheets and watched their chests rise and fall in peaceful sleep, I sat alone at my kitchen table. I stared at my phone, at the messages I'd missed, at the calls that never came, at the woman I thought I knew, the mother of my grandchildren. Something wasn't adding up. People don't just disappear. Money doesn't just vanish. And wives don't just walk away from their children without a reason. I opened my laptop, and that was when I decided I was going to find out exactly what my daughter-in-law had been doing while my son and his boys were sleeping in a car. Because whatever she'd done, it had destroyed my family. And I had a feeling this was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not because the house was noisy. It wasn't. The boys slept like they hadn't slept in weeks, sprawled out in real beds, their small bodies finally relaxed. Daniel stayed up late in the guest room, pacing softly, stopping every so often like he expected someone to knock on the door and tell him this was all a mistake. No, I didn't sleep because my mind wouldn't stop. I kept seeing the fogged windows of that car, the plastic bags, the way my grandson had whispered, "Grandma?" like he wasn't sure he was allowed to hope. By 3 a.m, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a mug of cold tea and my laptop open. I hadn't gone looking for answers yet. I was preparing myself for what I might find. People think betrayal announces itself loudly. It doesn't. It hides in small inconsistencies, in missing details, in stories that sound rehearsed instead of lived. I started with what I knew. My daughter-in-law, Emily, had always been charming, the kind of woman who smiled easily, laughed at the right moments, and somehow made you feel like you were the most important, interesting person in the room. She'd never been openly unkind to me, just distant, polite, efficient. Too efficient. I typed her name into my browser, then stopped. No, I didn't want gossip. I wanted facts. So I did what any mother with grown children and a lifetime of quiet observation does when something feels wrong. I followed the money. By morning, I already had questions. Daniel had said she lost her job, but when I checked her old company's website, her profile was still there, updated, active. That didn't mean much on its own, until I found her LinkedIn. Her job hadn't ended. It had changed, promoted. 2 months ago. My stomach twisted. I checked the dates. 2 months ago was when the rent first went unpaid. I closed my eyes. "Mom?" Daniel's voice came from the hallway. I turned to see him standing there, hair messy, eyes tired but clearer than they'd been the night before. "Did you sleep?" I asked. He shook his head. "Come sit," I said gently. He sat across from me, hands wrapped around a mug I hadn't realized I'd poured for him. "Daniel," I said slowly, "are you absolutely certain Emily lost her job?" He frowned. "That's what she told me." I turned the laptop toward him, his face drained of color. "That's not possible," he said. "She showed me an email." "Did you read it?" I asked. He hesitated. "I trusted her," he said quietly. I nodded. "So did I said. Once. That was the moment everything shifted. Not into anger, into clarity. We spent the morning piecing things together. Dates, messages, bank statements Daniel had access to, emails he'd ignored because he'd been exhausted, working double shifts, trying to hold his family together with one hand, while the other was being quietly emptied. "She handled the accounts," he said over and over, like he was trying to convince himself that was normal. "It's common," I said. "It's also dangerous when only one person sees the full picture." By noon, we knew this wasn't just abandonment, it was preparation. Emily hadn't just left, she'd planned. She'd transferred money slowly, in amounts small enough not to raise alarms. She'd opened a separate account months earlier. She'd put the lease solely in her name, then stopped paying rent while telling Daniel everything was fine. And when the eviction notice came, "She hid it," Daniel whispered. "She let you take the fall," I said. He nodded, jaw tight. "She told me not to worry, said it was junk mail." I reached across the table and took his hand. "She weaponized your trust," I said. "That's not a mistake, that's a choice." The boys came downstairs around then, still in pajamas, rubbing their eyes. "Grandma," the youngest said, "can we stay here today?" I smiled and opened my arms. "Of course," I said, "as long as you want." They climbed into my lap like they used to when they were little, and something inside me hardened into resolve. No matter what Emily had done, she was not taking any more from my family. That afternoon, while Daniel took the boys to the park for the first time in weeks, I made calls. Careful ones, quiet ones, the kind you make when you don't want to alert the wrong people. I spoke to a friend who worked in real estate, then another who handled legal aid cases, then, finally, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years who worked in corporate compliance. I didn't accuse. I asked questions, and each answer made my stomach sink further. Emily hadn't just moved out, she'd moved up. New apartment, upscale building, different part of the city, different life. One she'd been funding while my son rationed gas money and skipped meals so his children could eat. Daniel came back around sunset. The boys were laughing, cheeks flushed from fresh air, holding on to a bag of cheap toys he'd bought at the dollar store like it was treasure. Emily hadn't called, hadn't texted, not once. "Daniel, she knows where you are," I said quietly when the boys were distracted. He nodded. "She just doesn't care," he said. The resignation in his voice broke my heart more than anger ever could have. "Daniel," I said, "has she contacted the boys at all?" He swallowed. "Only once," he said, "to tell them she was busy." busy. I stood up. I'm going to say something and you may not like it. He looked at me. She didn't just leave you. She left them. He closed his eyes. And that, I continued, changes everything. That night, after the boys were asleep again, I sat down with Daniel and told him what I'd found. All of it. The promotion, the money transfers, the apartment. He listened in silence, face pale, hands clenched. She planned this, he said finally. Yes, I replied, and she counted on you being too ashamed to ask for help. He laughed bitterly. She knows me, he said. Yes, I replied, but she underestimated me. He looked up. What are you going to do? He asked. I folded my hands. I'm going to make sure she doesn't get away with it, I said. Not legally, not financially, and not as a mother. His breath caught. She's their mother, he said weakly. So am I replied, in every way that matters right now. The next morning, Emily finally called. Not Daniel, me. I let it ring, then ring again. On the third call, I answered. Hello, I said pleasantly. There was a pause. Then her voice, bright, practiced. Oh, hi. I didn't realize this was your number. I smiled to myself. You know exactly whose number this is, I said. Another pause. Is Daniel there? She asked. No, and neither are the boys. Her tone shifted just slightly. What do you mean? I mean, I said calmly, that I found my son living in his car with your children. Silence. Then, you're exaggerating. No, I said, I'm documenting. Her breath hitched. This isn't your business, she snapped. I leaned back in my chair. When you abandoned your children, I said, you made it my business. She scoffed. I needed space. You needed money and freedom. Her voice dropped. You don't understand what I've been dealing with. Oh, I said quietly, I understand far more than you think. She started to speak again, faster now, defensive. I cut her off.
You have two choices, I said. You can cooperate quietly, or you can explain all of this to a judge. Her breathing was audible through the phone. You wouldn't, she said. I smiled. I already am, I replied, and then I hung up. That night, I watched my grandsons eat dinner at my table, real food, second helpings, laughter returning in pieces. Daniel sat beside them, eyes following every movement like he was afraid they might vanish again. And as I cleared the dishes, I knew something with absolute certainty. Emily thought she could erase her family and start over. She thought no one would notice. She was wrong, because I had found my son living in his car with my grandsons, and that was the moment I stopped being polite. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a reckoning, and it had only just begun. The first thing Emily did after that phone call was go silent. No angry texts, no frantic explanations, no sudden interest in seeing her children. Just silence. And silence, I'd learned, was never accidental with someone like her. It was a tactic, a pause meant to make us doubt ourselves, to let guilt creep back in, to give her time to reposition. She thought we would wait. She was wrong. The very next morning, I drove Daniel to a legal aid office across town. He protested the entire way. Mom, I don't want to make this ugly, he said, staring out the window. She's still their mother. I kept my eyes on the road. She stopped acting like their mother the moment she let them sleep in a car. She knew, I cut in, gently but firmly, and she chose herself anyway. He went quiet after that. The office was small, tucked between a laundromat and a discount pharmacy. Nothing fancy, no marble floors or glass walls, just a waiting room full of people holding folders too tightly, hope and fear mixed in equal measure. The woman who met us was named Carla. She looked at Daniel first, then at me, then she asked the question that mattered. Are the children safe right now? Yes, I said immediately. They're with me. Carla nodded once. Good, she said. That's where we'll start. Daniel told his story again, from the beginning. This time, he didn't soften it. He didn't excuse Emily's behavior. He didn't take responsibility for things that were never his to carry. He talked about the eviction, the hidden notice, the missed rent, the nights in the car. And when he reached the part about the boys asking when they could go home, his voice broke. Carla listened without interrupting. When he finished, she closed the folder and leaned forward. Based on what you've told me, she said, your wife didn't just abandon the marital home, she abandoned the children. Daniel stiffened. What does that mean? It means, she replied, you have grounds for emergency custody. The word landed hard. Custody. You mean permanently? He asked. I mean immediately, she said, and then we'll see. I felt something loosen in my chest. Emily had always spoken as if the boys were accessories, things she could pick up and put down when it suited her. Now, for the first time, the law was using a different language. Responsibility. That afternoon, Emily finally resurfaced. She showed up at my house, unannounced, uninvited. I saw her car pull into the driveway from the kitchen window and felt a flash of something sharp and hot rise in my chest. Not fear. Anger. The kind that comes when someone who's caused damage thinks they still have access. She rang the doorbell, once, twice. I didn't move. Grandma? My older grandson asked quietly from the living room. Is that Mom? I knelt in front of him. Yes, I said honestly, it is. Are we going with her? He asked, eyes wide. I put my hands on his shoulders. No, I said gently. You're staying right here. His shoulders relaxed instantly. That told me everything I needed to know. I stood up and opened the door. Emily looked exactly as I expected. Well-dressed, hair styled, makeup perfect, not a trace of worry on her face, just irritation, like someone who'd been inconvenienced. This is ridiculous, she said, without greeting. You can't keep my kids from me. I smiled politely. Watch me, I said. Her eyes flashed. Daniel put you up to this, didn't he? No, I replied. You did. She scoffed. I needed time. I was overwhelmed. You were promoted, I said calmly. She froze. Just for a second, but I saw it. That's not your business, she snapped. It became my business when I found your children sleeping in a parking lot, I said. Her voice rose. You don't know the full story. Then tell it to the court, I replied. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I want to see them, she said. No, I replied. You can't legally... Yes, I interrupted. I can, and Daniel already has. Her face drained of color. What? She whispered. Emergency custody, I said. Filed this morning. She took a step back like I'd struck her. You're lying, she said. I held her gaze steadily. Try me. That was when she started crying. Real tears this time, or convincing ones at least. I love my boys, she sobbed. I just needed space. I was drowning. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply said the truth. Good mothers don't disappear, I said. They ask for help. Her crying stopped instantly, like a switch flipped. You think you're better than me? She hissed. No, I replied. I think I'm protecting them. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice. You'll regret this, she said. I met her eyes steadily. You already regret what you did, I said. You just don't like that you got caught. She turned and walked back to her car without another word. I watched her drive away, and I knew absolutely that she wasn't done. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and preparation, school enrollment forms, doctor appointments, new clothes for the boys, nothing fancy, just things that fit and didn't smell like old upholstery. They adjusted faster than I expected. Children always do when they finally feel safe. The nightmares stopped after the third night. The bedwetting stopped after the fifth. By the end of the week, they were laughing again.
That alone told me we were doing the right thing. Emily's retaliation came in the form of stories. She told mutual friends that Daniel was unstable, that he'd taken the kids without warning, that I was manipulating him. She posted vague messages online about toxic in-laws and maternal alienation. I didn't respond. I didn't defend. I documented. Screenshots, dates, statements. Because the truth doesn't need volume. It needs records. Daniel struggled more than the boys. Guilt has a way of clinging to parents long after it's useful. "She's still their mom," he said one night, sitting at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed. "What if I'm doing the wrong thing?" I poured him a cup of tea and slid it toward him. "Let me ask you something," I said. "When was the last time she asked how they were sleeping?" He frowned. "I don't know." "When was the last time she came to a school event?" I asked. Silence. "When was the last time she chose them over herself?" I asked gently. He looked down. "I don't think she ever did," he whispered. I put my hand over his. "Then this isn't about taking them from her," I said. "It's about finally choosing them." The court date was set for the following week. Emily showed up with a lawyer, expensive suit, confident posture, the look of someone who still believed this was a misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with the right words. Daniel showed up with Carla and me. The judge listened carefully. Emily spoke first. She talked about stress, about mental health, about needing time to rediscover herself, about how Daniel overreacted. Then Daniel spoke. He talked about the car, the eviction, the children sleeping in the back seat while their mother paid rent on a luxury apartment. The judge didn't interrupt. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. "My grandsons are not leverage," I said calmly. "They are children." Emily rolled her eyes. The judge noticed. "I found them living in a car, cold, hungry, afraid to ask for help." I looked directly at Emily. "And I will not apologize for stepping in when you stepped out." The courtroom was silent. The judge looked down at Emily. "Did you know your children were living in a vehicle?" he asked. Emily hesitated. I assumed Daniel had family support," she said. The judge's expression hardened. "That's not an answer," he said. Silence. "I'm granting temporary full custody to the father with supervised visitation for the mother, pending further review."
Emily's head snapped up. "What?" she cried. The gavel came down. Just like that, her illusion shattered. That night, Daniel cried for the first time since I'd found him in that parking lot. Not loudly, quietly, like someone finally letting go of something heavy. "I didn't think anyone would take my side," he said. I hugged him. "You don't need sides," I replied. "You need truth." Emily didn't show up for the first scheduled visitation, or the second. She claimed work conflicts, then illness, then scheduling issues. The boys noticed. They didn't ask why. They already knew. And that was the moment I understood the full scope of her betrayal. She hadn't just taken money. She hadn't just destroyed a marriage. She'd gambled with her children's sense of safety and lost. As I watched my grandsons build a blanket fort in my living room, laughing like the world was suddenly wide and kind again, I felt a deep, unshakable certainty. Emily thought she could walk away and rewrite the story later. She thought time would blur the damage. But the truth was already rooted, and no matter what she tried next, this family was no longer hers to break. Emily didn't take the court's decision quietly. She took it personally. The moment the judge granted Daniel temporary full custody with supervised visitation, something in her snapped. Not publicly, not in the courtroom where she still needed to look composed, but afterward, where consequences finally had room to breathe. The first sign was the emails. Long, rambling, sent at odd hours of the night. They weren't addressed to Daniel, they were addressed to me. At first, they were pleading. I never meant for things to get this bad. You have to believe me. I was overwhelmed and made mistakes. Then they turned sharp. You always thought you were better than me. You turned my own husband against me. You're poisoning my children. I printed every single one, because Carla had been very clear. Patterns matter.
Daniel tried to shield the voice from it all, but children sense tension the way animals sense storms. They didn't need to read the emails or hear the voicemails to know something was wrong. The older ones started asking questions again. "Is Mom mad at us?" he asked one night while I was tucking him in. My heart clenched. "No," I said carefully, "this isn't your fault." "Did we do something wrong?" he pressed. I sat on the edge of the bed and took his small hands in mine. "You did nothing wrong," I said. "Adults are responsible for their own choices." He nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt lingering. That doubt, that quiet, creeping belief that love can disappear if you make the wrong move, was what scared me most. Because once children learn that, it stays with them. Emily's lawyer filed a motion to modify custody less than 2 weeks later. She claimed Daniel was unstable, that he'd manipulated the narrative, and that I was interfering with her parental rights. Carla wasn't surprised. "She's scrambling," she told us. "This is what people do when they lose control." Daniel looked sick when she said that. "I never wanted this," he whispered. "I know," I replied, "but she did." The hearing was scheduled quickly, too quickly, which meant the judge had already seen enough to be concerned. This time, Emily came prepared, not with facts, but with emotion. She cried. She spoke about her childhood trauma, her anxiety, her need to rediscover herself. She talked about how Daniel didn't understand her and how I'd always interfered. When the judge asked her why she hadn't contacted her children for weeks, she deflected. "I didn't want to confuse them," she said. The judge raised an eyebrow. "By not speaking to them at all?" he asked. Emily faltered. "Well, I thought space would be healthy." The judge turned to Daniel. "Did you ever prevent her from contacting the children?" he asked. "No," Daniel said firmly. "I encouraged it." The judge nodded and turned to me. "And you?" he asked. "I found my grandsons living in a car," I said calmly. "Everything I've done since has been to keep them safe." Emily scoffed loudly. The judge noticed. What Emily didn't know, what she hadn't counted on, was that her silence had consequences. The boys' teachers submitted statements, so did the school counselor, so did the pediatrician. Each one documented the same thing: improved sleep, improved behavior, improved emotional stability, all since Emily had left. And then Carla introduced the financial records, the hidden account, the transfers, the unpaid rent, the luxury apartment lease dated weeks before the eviction. Emily's lawyer tried to object. The judge waved him off. "No," he said, "this is relevant." Emily's face went pale. "Miss Harris," the judge said, looking directly at her, "did you knowingly withhold financial information from your husband while transferring marital funds for your own use?" Emily opened her mouth, closed it. I didn't think." "That's not the question," the judge said. Silence. "I find your testimony lacking in credibility," the judge continued, "and frankly, concerning." The room was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. "I am maintaining temporary full custody with the father," the judge said. "Supervised visitation will continue at the court's discretion." Emily burst into tears. This time, no one rushed to comfort her. After the hearing, Emily cornered Daniel in the hallway. I saw it happening and moved closer. "You're destroying my life," she hissed. Daniel looked at her steadily. "You did that. I just stopped covering for you." Her eyes flicked to me. "This is your fault," she snapped. I met her gaze. "No," I said calmly. "This is the result." She stormed off. The boys adjusted faster than anyone expected. Children are resilient when they're believed. We settled into routines: school mornings, homework at the kitchen table, bedtime stories they pretended not to need, but always lingered for. Daniel found steady work closer to home. He smiled more, laughed again, but the scars were there. "I don't know how I missed it," he said one night. "All the signs." "You didn't miss them," I replied. "You trusted someone who didn't deserve it." He nodded slowly. "I won't make that mistake again," he said. Emily missed 2 more supervised visits, then 3. Each time she had an excuse. Each excuse was documented. By the 4th missed visit, the supervisor filed a report. By the 5th, the court took notice. Emily's narrative began to collapse under its own weight, because eventually, words have to match actions. And hers never did. The final blow came from an unexpected place: Emily's employer. During discovery, Carla requested verification of Emily's work schedule, something Emily had repeatedly used to justify missing visits. What came back was damning. Emily had requested time off, approved time off, on the days she claimed she was too busy to see her children. When the judge saw that, his expression hardened in a way I'll never forget. "Miss Harris," he said during the next hearing, "you have repeatedly prioritized personal convenience over parental responsibility." Emily shook her head desperately. "That's not fair." "I am revoking supervised visitation until further notice," the judge said. "You may petition again after completing court-mandated counseling and demonstrating consistent effort." Emily screamed, actually screamed. The bailiff stepped forward. Daniel didn't react. Neither did the boys. They were already learning what it meant when someone's words didn't line up with their choices. That night, the house was quiet. Not tense, not fearful, just calm. The boys were asleep. Daniel sat across from me at the table, hands wrapped around a mug. "She lost them," he said softly. "No," I corrected. "She let go." He nodded. "I never wanted to be a single father," he said. "You're not alone," I replied. He smiled faintly. "I know," he said. "That's the difference." Emily sent one last message, a text this time. "I hope you're happy." I didn't respond. Happiness wasn't the point. Safety was. Stability was. Truth was. And as I turned off the lights and walked past the boys' rooms, hearing steady breathing, soft murmurs of dreams, I knew something with absolute certainty. Emily's betrayal hadn't just been leaving, it had been choosing herself over her children again and again, even when the door was still open. And now that door was closed, not out of spite, out of necessity. Because love doesn't abandon, and family doesn't disappear into silence and expect to be welcomed back without accountability. This wasn't the end of the story, but it was the end of her control. And for the first time since that night in the parking lot, I felt something solid settle into place. Relief. The house didn't feel temporary anymore. That realization came to me one quiet morning while I was standing at the sink, watching sunlight spill across the kitchen floor. The boys were eating cereal at the table, arguing softly about which cartoon to watch before school. Daniel was tying his boots by the door, already running late but smiling anyway. It hit me then. This wasn't a stopgap. This was home. And the fact that it had taken crisis, betrayal, and near destruction to rebuild something this solid made my chest ache in a way I couldn't quite name. Emily vanished after the court revoked visitation. Not dramatically, not with a final confrontation. She simply stopped. No calls, no emails, no messages routed through lawyers. At first, Daniel checked his phone obsessively, as if expecting another explosion. When days turned into weeks, the checking slowed. When weeks turned into months, it stopped entirely. The boys noticed too, but not the way adults expect. They didn't cry. They didn't ask when she was coming back. Instead, they adjusted. Children are heartbreakingly good at adapting when they realize no one is coming to rescue them. That truth haunted me more than anything Emily had done. The therapist Carla recommended met with the boys every week. At first, they were quiet, guarded, careful with their words, like they'd learned that honesty could be inconvenient. Then, slowly, things began to surface. The older one talked about nights when his mother stayed out late and told them not to wake her, about mornings when the fridge was empty and she told them to just wait until Dad gets paid, about being told to lie, to teachers, to neighbors, to friends. She said it was grown-up stuff, he said once, that we shouldn't make it worse. That sentence nearly broke me, because no child should ever be asked to protect an adult from consequences. Daniel struggled with guilt in waves. Some days he was confident, steady, present, certain he'd done the right thing. Other days he unraveled over small things. I should have noticed sooner, he said one night, pacing the living room. I should have checked the accounts. I should have asked more questions. I let him talk. Then I said, "You were surviving." He looked at me, eyes red. "That doesn't excuse it." "No," I agreed, "but it explains it. An explanation matters when you're learning how to forgive yourself." He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. "I don't know how I missed that she didn't care," he whispered. I sat beside him. "You didn't miss it," I said gently. "You just believed love meant patience." He nodded slowly. "And now?" he asked. "Now," I replied, "love means protection." The final custody hearing came 6 months later. Emily didn't attend. Her lawyer did, but without witnesses, without evidence, without the confidence he'd once carried. Carla stood calmly and presented documentation. Missed visitations, uncompleted counseling, no attempts at reunification. The judge listened, expression unreadable. When he spoke, his words were measured. "Parental rights come with parental responsibility," he said, "and responsibility is demonstrated through action, not intent." He granted Daniel full legal and physical custody. No shared decision-making, no visitation schedule, no ambiguity. The gavel came down once, just once, and it was over. We didn't celebrate, not with champagne, not with dinner out. We went home, ordered pizza, let the boys stay up too late watching movies on the couch. Normal felt like the greatest luxury imaginable. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, Daniel stood in the hallway and stared at his son's bedroom doors. "They're really mine," he said quietly. "They always were," I replied. He shook his head. "No, I mean protected, permanently." I smiled. "Yes," I said, "they are." Emily tried one final time. A letter arrived in the mail, handwritten, the envelope addressed in careful script. Daniel brought it to me without opening it. "I don't want to read it," he said. I nodded. "Then don't." We didn't open it. We didn't respond. We shredded it and threw it away. Closure doesn't always come from understanding someone else. Sometimes it comes from choosing not to let them back in. Life didn't magically become easy. Money was still tight for a while. Daniel still carried scars from the marriage. The boys still had moments of sadness that surfaced unexpectedly. But there was consistency now, predictability, trust. Dinner happened every night at the same time. School bags were packed the night before. Homework was checked. Bedtime stories were non-negotiable. Stability healed them in ways no apology ever could.
One evening, months later, my younger grandson climbed into my lap while I was reading. "Grandma," he said seriously, "did Mom leave because of us?" My heart clenched. "No," I said firmly. "She left because she made choices that had nothing to do with you." He frowned. "But she didn't come back." I brushed his hair back gently. "That's because some people don't know how to love the way children need," I said. "And that's sad, but it's not your fault." He considered that, then nodded. "Okay," he said, satisfied. And just like that, he was done carrying a burden that was never his. Daniel started dating again eventually. Slowly, carefully, he introduced the boys only when he was certain. He asked questions he'd never thought to ask before. He trusted his instincts this time. Watching him relearn how to trust, not blindly, but wisely, made me prouder than I could put into words. "You taught me," he said once. I smiled. "You reminded yourself." Sometimes, late at night, I think about that parking lot, about how close I came to never finding them, about how easily this story could have ended differently if I'd driven past, if I'd been too busy, if I'd assumed everything was fine. Emily thought her betrayal would stay hidden. She thought shame would keep my son silent. She thought children would adapt quietly and forget. She was wrong. Because love notices. Love stops the car. Love opens the door. Love refuses to look away. The boys are older now, taller, louder, confident in a way that only comes from knowing you are safe, even when the world isn't perfect. They don't talk about their mother much. When they do, it's factual, neutral, unloaded. That's the real consequence of Emily's choices. Not punishment, not revenge. Absence. One afternoon, as we sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel turned to me. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't found us," he said quietly. I reached for his hand. "I do," I replied, "and I'm glad we'll never have to find out." Emily's betrayal wasn't just leaving her marriage, it was abandoning her children emotionally, financially, and morally, and expecting time to erase the damage. But time doesn't erase truth, it reveals it. And what was revealed in the end wasn't just who she was, it was who we were when it mattered. A father who stood up, children who survived, and a grandmother who refused to let silence win. I found my son living in his car with my grandsons. That moment changed everything. And when I discovered his wife's betrayal, I didn't just uncover a lie, I uncovered the strength of a family that refused to break.